Hey guys, we're back live. Today has been a really eventful day. We had the peace signing uh, deal or day with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Rwanda and Congo in presence of Marco Rubio and Masad Boulos for the count of the U.S. And then something that I didn't anticipate, I didn't know, they moved to the White House, and that's why we had to also show um, Congolese officials and Rwanda officials at the White House in the Oval Office. So that's why we have been kind of like scrambling, but we're back for to discuss about something very, very, very important, still regarding Congo, um, regarding immigrants and how it affects Congo as a country, as a nation, but from a different perspective, a different prism. And since Donald Trump returned to office in January 2025, I think that's when he swore in, we've seen a terrifying escalation in the war on immigrants, and it's no longer just with our rhetoric. It's raids, it's deportations, it's fear rippling through families and neighborhoods. And recently, you might have seen it on TV. One of the largest city in the U.S., LA, is under siege. The National Guard was federalized by Donald Trump. So they're not patrolling, essentially patrolling the same street that used to be filled with music, protest, culture, peaceful protest and culture. And ICE raids have become a weekly nightmare, not just in LA, not just in California, but across the country. Um, and on an international level, new travel ban is here with 12 countries. And then today there was talks of including more and extending to 36. And we know exactly which communities are being targeted. Black immigrants, brown immigrants, Africans, Hispanics, Middle Easterns, those who want documented, and even those who have done everything by the book. So it's not really about legality anymore. It's not about doing the right thing. It's really has been about identity, and that's what we've seen, and about being seen as other, about being erased from this country or from what it means to be American, about erasing the soul of the immigrant story. So, and tonight, this evening, I'm really honored to be joined by a dear friend of mine, Mayra Vasquez. Uh, she's not just an organizer, but she's also joining me today, this evening, as a mother, as a fighter, as a truth teller. She and I go actually way back to our students' government days, and she's Hispanic, an experienced union organizer, and a proud mother of two beautiful children. And her story is America. And this evening, I really want to give our platform to her, a space, so that she can also amplify the voice of immigrants. So I'm gonna bring up Myra. Myra, hey, how you doing?
Good, good. Thank you for having me, Gaten. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I hope I did you justice by trying to introduce you. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you on such issue. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, we have a lot going on, and thanks for bearing with us into having a discussion. But I wanted to have this conversation with you regarding immigrants because I know and that this has been really happening, just like Trump announced, right? Like he's actually following up on his word. And we've seen on TV with the recent crackdown like that affected some communities, and I really want to say some, but we also seen allyship and people coming together, and particularly when it comes to what is happening, or what has happened in LA, in California, and Donald Trump, the U.S. president, has vowed to also crack down blue cities, and that's actually the term that he used, democratic cities, and essentially do the same thing. So, my first question to you is, how has this recent crackdown affected you personally? Make sure that I check in on you and your community, and especially as a mother raising beautiful black and brown children in today's America.
That's a great question. I think that with everything else, not just specifically the targeting of immigrant communities, there is a level of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion that I think takes over. Um, and it starts to feel like hope becomes a luxury that less and less of us can afford. And I know that there is hope out there as we see communities and groups, coalitions fighting against some of these targeted attacks on immigrants. But generally, a sense of exhaustion that I think that is hard to replenish in these times.
Yes, that's true. And have you? So you probably have been following what's going on in LA, right?
Yes, to the degree that I can, yes.
Yeah. What's your takes on what's going on? How would you describe, not how you feel, and thanks for allowing us to know essentially how you feel, but like, what's your perspective on what's going on regarding immigration, particularly right now under this current administration?
I mean, I think that it's a deliberative attack on communities of color, immigrant communities. I think you said it earlier. I mean, this is the story of America, and it's one that we have historically seen, right? It's a story of racism, it's a story of power and control, and it's not a new one. It is a blatant one, but not a new one. We've seen past administrations continuously focus in on communities, immigrant communities, and deport and separate families. So I feel like, again, it's what is happening in LA is just a culmination of all of that in, again, this administration's blatant effort and targeted of those communities.
So living, and I keep saying that when I talk to my friends, it's really hard, like, particularly during this time, right, to be an immigrant here in the U.S. And there was a lot of fear, and I'm saying that because I'm involved in the education area. Like, I did co-found the New Young Scholar, which
Mhm.
we helped um, provide resources to students, international students, Black students, into to their journey. And we have seen this crackdown on immigrants also affecting uh, those who play by the book, who came, who were vetted, they had interviews, did everything they could to come here, but they somehow find themselves in a position where they are being targeted. And sometimes it's something as silly as um, not paying their parking tickets, or having a ticket, like a speeding ticket, right? Something really silly, like they're not breaking they're not committing any crime per se, but then because of those silly little things, that they have the whole visa being canceled. And we've seen that not just within our communities, but also across the country with international students. So I can literally, vouch and speak on that perspective about the fear. But I really wanted to know if that fear is being reflected in your personal life, in terms of, and I didn't mention that, and just because, I know you raising kids, and they are essentially in between, not, they're literally half Black, half Hispanic. So how has that conversation been to let them know that they are literally growing into today's America, and what's it's like to be brown, what's it's like to be Black, what's it's like to be mixed?
Yeah, that's also a great question. I think just going back to what you said a little bit earlier, it was never about legality. It was never about doing it the right way, right? It's deeper than that. And when you start to peel back at the root of what is happening, um, in regards to your question, I think that children are very resilient and are
Mm.
capable of holding the truth, obviously age appropriate truth, but truth nonetheless. And part of the way that I've approached those conversations is by simply being honest. It, one thing about that intersectionality of raising mixed children or raising children of color is that shielding them from what is happening is a privilege that is not afforded to them, right? And
Hmm.
so um, a constant reminder that their identity and belonging extends deeper than this country, than this nationality or birthplace. And it's deeper than this country will ever give us or them space for, perhaps. That history of identity and belonging extends to places like Mexico or Ghana, West Africa, where they're also from. And they have to continue to grow in a direction that they must themselves have the courage to ask other why things are the way they are, and the courage to raise expectations around them, whether in school and social circles or as they get older. And reminding them that raising expectations can come from a place of love and empathy, and that doesn't necessarily have to that it's rooted in that, and that activism or liberation work has to be rooted in that.
So you don't sugarcoat. You're actually telling them what to expect from the world outside.
Um, Age appropriate truth.
Mhm.
Yes. What is happening? I think that children, once they start asking questions, they're fully capable of again understanding and having their own sense of questions or reality, especially in schools, right? Like we've seen this administration be very bold to enter schools, public schools, to go into hospitals, and so where that fear has extended into what we've considered as safe spaces, they must recognize what is happening to their classmates' family. That and again, the shielding them from the truth or trying to um, hide what is happening is again not a privilege that most of our um, youth of color are allowed.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I'm gonna ask you this question because we are literally on month 6 of Trump's presidency. He was elected and sworn in, started his term officially on January, like I said, January 20th. Um, but either during this current administration, right, or his first term, do you remember a moment when you actually felt scared for yourself, or maybe not just for yourself, but for your community? I think that's a really good way to say that.
Yeah, I think I had been in this space of like numbness for a while, of like this can't be real. What are like the I knew that like the real world consequences and implications were down the pipeline, but I don't think it kind of fully registered until my mom, who hasn't seen her father in 20 plus years, um, and has gained legal status, and his health conditions have been deteriorating, that choice between being able to physically be there for an aging parent with health conditions and the possibility of not being able to come back into the country or travel safely, is I think the first time that it fully registered, of like this isn't about whether you have um, legal status or not. It is about something deeper than that. That someone who can't leave the country with the safety knowing that they'll be able to reenter.
Yeah, and before moving to the next question, I think there are folks online asking questions, and I really want to acknowledge that. Thanks, y'all, for tuning in and watching. There was a question for Fayemi20. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. And that person said, "Hello, Myra. Did you see this coming? Also, did you or any of your family members vote for Trump?" You don't have to answer any of these questions if you don't feel like it, because that's the live, and people just curious. They want to ask questions. Maybe we can start there. Did you see this coming in particularly?
Absolutely. I think I was individually hopeful that it wouldn't come to this, but I think our collective uh, memory can tell us that yes, this was coming. Um, and no, I did not, or know of any family member who voted for Trump. We may not be on speaking terms if they had.
And Miss Montana 7 said, as a child, my parents didn't know how. As a child, my parents didn't know how to explain what was coming. So letting your children know without fear is great. And Miss Montana also said, thank you both. Myra, what you are explaining, I fully understand. As a mixed race woman who grew up in Scotland, it took me until my teenage years to truly understand that racism is systemic. Thank you for your comment. And again, that's why I really thought that this conversation, not just bringing you, but also the other guests that we're gonna have, and see Emmanuel Ashes on backstage. I want to bring you up shortly. Um, and talking about that systemic racism, right? Like the Miss Montana 7 said, that racism is systemic, and we often hear that this isn't who we are, right? When talking about the U.S., when talking about America, when it comes to American policy, and I really want to specify, when it comes to American policy, that this is who we are. Uh, uh, but as someone with organizing experience, as I mentioned, from our time at Portland Community College, um, and uh, working at the Multicultural Center, the student government, and even your journey, essentially your journey, working right now in organizing, I would say, sphere. Uh, do you think this crackdown is really part of a longer pattern, or do you agree with the saying that this is not who America is?
I think it involves a little bit of taking a step back and say, like, who are we asking, right? Is this a larger pattern? Absolutely. Have we seen this happen historically? Yes. Is this who we are? I think that that's what we're grappling with right now. That more and more of our values and the average American is in opposition of what is happening to immigrant communities, that we do want to see ICE out of our schools, out of our communities, neighborhoods, and hospitals. We want to we want policies to reflect humane practices, that we want to acknowledge that these are people, and that no one is illegal on stolen land, right? And so I think those things are at odds with one another. And again, if we're thinking about as what is happening in terms of power and control, essentially they are at odds with one another.
Okay, thanks for that. And something again, and allow me again, if you really don't want, and I know you and I, we kind of like discuss how open this was going to be, and you agree, but if you just feel for any moments that you sharing is too much, feel free to take a step back, and that's fine. My next question to you is, uh, you have lived most of your youth, right, as an youth and early 20s, and documented in this country, and today you are a U.S. citizen. And why do you think immigrants, especially black and brown, become the first scapegoats when it comes to um, blaming the current situation in the US in terms of like economy, and when everything is when things are not going right, black and browns tends to be the first one to be blamed. Why do you think so? Why do you think that Africans, blacks, um, Hispanics, right, and even right now international students, refugee folks get blamed when there is this rise in joblessness, like unemployment rates, when things are getting expensive, when folks are having hard time to find a job? Why do you think that immigrants get blamed?
Again, I think it's in our history. You said earlier, like that it's a way to pit folks against each other, right? It's about othering people. It's about racism. Again, it's about power and control. And the ability to divide allows some of that to unfold. Um, and that historically has happened with any immigrant community, from Mexicans to African immigrants to the Irish to the Chinese. There is long-standing examples of how immigrant communities have been the scapegoat to um, justify some of the political and economic issues in this country.
Mhm. Yeah. And you have worked in you not you have worked, you are working right now in union organizing. You work with the American Federation of Teachers in the labor movement, so I commend you for that. So for you, and I think there's also a question regarding that by still Miss Montana 7. I appreciate you commenting and asking question, but I'm gonna read that first and then address my question. And she said, "How do you both see a political means to influence change? We saw groups protest on the street, but it seems with the latest ruling in favor of Trump that the US is removing our rights to democracy." That's Miss Montana question and comment section. But what I wanted to ask you is really related to that. Is what does resistance look like right now at this particular time? What are some grassroots movement we should be watching or joining?
Yeah, I mean, resistance essentially is disruption and non-compliance. It's like obviously um, um, through training and education and the development of consciousness of what is happening in this country, that it is not about legality or undocumented versus legal documentation. Once we start to peel back those layers, we can see it for what it is and then be prepared to resist it. Um, your second part of that question of like, what are some organizations, or I think I want to take a step back actually and talk a
Hmm.
little bit more about what resistance means.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Specifically, I think for labor unions, it's about taking that. I mean, unions in this country are some of the strongest organizations when it comes to that intersection of a lot of different social issues, but specifically the intersection between immigrant rights and workers. I think some of that collective resistance means how do we use our collective union power to bargain for the common good and use those collective bargaining agreements and contracts to bargain language that protects immigrants, that protects against wage theft, that addresses safety and workplace issues, that makes sure that employers are not complying with ICE in schools, at universities, that being a sanctuary campus means something and holds teeth, that it protects
Mm-hmm.
students, and that we are not paternalistic in the fight for immigrant rights, that non-compliance is a shared goal, and that having that is intrinsically tied to a lot of different issues. And so that I think is kind of where I've been thinking about um, how our unions are resisting and organizing and placing their power on the line to protect immigrant and immigrant communities, undocumented students, and staff that may be um, um, in fear and on the just kind of at the front and center of Trump's policies and Trump's initiatives.
Definitely, definitely. And any grassroots movements that we should be watching or joining in your
Yeah,
perspective?
a couple that I've been kind of leaning into is VOS, Workers' Rights Education Project. They're kind of that intersectionality between workers and immigrant rights and workers' rights. Asylum Seeker Solidarity Collective is a mutual aid group. And I think that right now, thinking about their that the level of again resistance and noncompliance and taking action has a plethora of ways that folks can lean into that, right? So um, showing up for mutual aid is one of them, organizing with different spaces, um, and yeah, those I think the two that are coming to mind right now.
Mhm. Yeah. And one of the things that and I think it's very important, the reason why I'm really being intentional right now to speak about that, because sometimes people when it comes to immigration, when it comes to crackdown that we're talking about, or even this current administration policy, some folks or some communities tend to think that they are not concerned, that oh, it's fine, I'm documented, or it's fine, I'm a U.S. citizen, or it's fine, I'm a green card holder, and we have seen even arguments and bickering and fights between communities, right? Um, so, uh, how do we build unity? How do you think we build unity between the African community, the Hispanic communities, and the Middle Eastern community? And like I'm saying, like who often tend to like fight against each other about who is concerned and who is not. How do you think we build that unity?
I mean, I keep coming back to when we peel back the layers of some of the narrative and what is being communicated to us, that when we see it for what it is and it's blatant racism and the weight of power and control, that we start to see that our strength comes in solidarity and unity and collective, again, collective action or collective noncompliance, and that that our struggles are intrinsically tied, that status, again, we've seen that it may actually not mean anything to this administration. We've seen folks with status be detained or be deported. You mentioned earlier that low level violations like a parking ticket or a speeding ticket may still place people in danger who have documentation or who have a legal status. So it isn't about that narrative about, well, it's targeting folks who have a criminal history, is a way to, again, just divide and distract at the core of what is being intended here. And I think that true solidarity amongst groups is not just about what we say, but how we act with one another and what our collective
Mm,
demands are and what we will do if they are not met. And I think that that's where we have our power and our strength in numbers, is by taking that collective action, that solidarity, and be able to work with one another to communicate demands and organize until they're met.
yeah, thank you so much. And one more question before we move into our guests. And again, thank you so much for opening up and agreeing to do this with me. I hear a lot of knowledge and I hear a lot of skills, and I think that's why I was really intentional into picking you for this conversation. Um, but what gives you hope despite everything?
Um, that's a great question. I think that one like personal reflection that I've been making in the last 6 months is, like, I remember being in my teens and sitting in my high school counselor's office, and for the first time kind of communicating that I didn't know what the future would hold because I didn't have status in this country and what that meant. And as graduation date approached, I, I couldn't even think what the next step in my life would be. And to now see streets being filled with folks coming out to speak out against these policies, to show support for immigrant communities, for folks who are organizing, sharing information, taking active part in keeping their community safe, participating in mutual aid. That offers me a tremendous amount of hope, and it's important that I think that we reflect on the progress that we've made and the power that we hold, especially when we're thinking into the future about what is it that we want to see and how do we raise those expectations and prepare others to do the same. And again, I think that comes. There are a lot of ways that folks can that folks can lean into it and be part of that work, by receiving training, running Know Your Rights trainings for communities who are affected by this, by There is the Portland Immigration Rights Coalition hotline that you can call specifically here
Mhm.
in this area to let folks know about ICE activity. So there's so many ways that folks can take action and be part of keeping their community safe. And I think that that gives me a tremendous amount of hope.
Thank you so much. And any message last to conclude that you want to leave people with, especially the folks watching live, and those who don't feel like they are directly impacted, those who are impacted. Any message you want to leave for the folks?
Yeah, I mean, as the go like the saying goes, Gaten, no one is free until we're all free. That liberation is intrinsically tied, and that while some things don't directly affect us, they do so indirectly. That the country and community that we want to build takes active participation and active action, and that leaning into again, thinking about solidarity is not just about the things that we say, but the things that we do and the action that we take. And again, that our power is in numbers, and our power is in our values and our commitment to making sure that we are keeping our communities and people safe.
Mara, always a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise, thank you for the
Yeah,
invitation.
thank you. Wow, that was Myra Vasquez trying to introduce us into our conversation. Congo Unfiltered always from a perspective of immigrants, right? And our next guest, I'm going to bring both of them on. First is Emanuela Shela. Emanuela Shasha is the director of global initiatives and development at the Congolese Integration Network (CIN), where she leads the national and international partnerships to support refugee integration, early learning, and economic empowerment. Originally from the DRC, Emanuela combines her background in corporate finance with deep community work to build trauma informed, culture relevant programs for immigrants and refugee families. She has spoken nationally on topics ranging from youth justice to African cultural restoration. Let me bring Emanuela. Hey, I think you're on mute. Let me see. Maybe. How you doing?
Hello, I'm
How
good.
are
How are
you?
you?
I'm good. Finally, we're doing this, huh?
We're finally doing this. It's Friday, and it's what a way to close the week in power.
Yes, yes. And sorry, we are running behind. We had Trump at the White House with Congolese official in Rwanda. I'm not sure if you watched that. But yeah, we will be really straight to the point, concise, and hopefully educational for folks to learn. The next guest is Haley Weber. I hope I'm not butchering the name, and please feel free to correct me when you're back when you're on stage. Haley is mixed and first generation Caribbean Hispanic immigrant undergraduate, and she got her undergraduate in international politics, graduate degrees in political science, and work for the local government. Haley have been active in advocacy on a range of issues for roughly 10 years. So I want to bring you up, and I think you're on mute.
Hello.
Hey,
Yes.
how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you? So
I'm
nice to
good.
meet you guys.
Yes, yes. I'm not sure how if you guys heard the conversation that I just had with Myra, and I know Emmanuel, you were in backstage for quite a long time, and in we having this conversation. I wanted to have this conversation with y'all regarding immigrants, and I think the title is there, like Congo Unfiltered and America's War on Immigrants. Are immigrants still welcome in this country? Trying to unpack this from based on what we've learned or what we heard from Mayra Vasquez, what she just shared with us, but also what's going on in the country. And I want to start with you first. Excuse me, Emanuela, Emanuela, you have been working with one of our partners uh, and Congolese Integration Network partners in terms of my capacity as one of the co-founders of the New Young Scholars. We've done a lot of work for folks at Bellevue College in the Seattle metro area. um, but also like a partner in terms of what we are doing for Congolese, right? And you have been involved. Um, so first, I want to give you first the floor to kind of like break down what Congolese Integration Network is and what it does, and speak more into the current atmosphere, the current environment, political environments that we've seen, and how that is impacting the students, the population, the folks that you guys are serving.
Yeah, thanks, Gator, for the platform and the invitation. And I hope I'm loud enough. I'm a soft-spoken person, but I'll try to make sure that I'm clear in my explanation. So, just like Gaten said, I'm part of the Congolese Integration Network. We are based in South King County and Pierce County in the state of Washington. And we also do work in the DRC, specifically in just basic humanitarian help and need, and also collaboration with local organizations to support the community. And here in the United States, our work is very focused on supporting refugees and immigrants, not specifically only just with integration, but we want to talk about liberation. Our work is not just to show or lead the arriving refugees or immigrant into connecting to services, but to really liberate them by showing them how to get access to the tools and the resources that will allow them to thrive. That's literally what we are. We educate, we usher, and lead for a thriving community. The current situation of the U.S. It's really one that, to be honest with you, the Congolese Integration Network has been feeling for quite a moment. It may be surprising to some other people, but because we deal with every single day with families looking for avenues and means of survival and also of liberation, we've seen this coming. The narrative, the rhetoric about supporting global communities at large in the United States has been shifting for quite some time now. And that should explain why we have President Trump in office. And it's a decision that when I say we, not specifically me, but as a people, it's a decision that was collectively made, and the feeling and the rhetoric about it has been kind of, shared a couple years before him taking office. So eventually, the people on the front line, nonprofits, NGOs like us, have been, dealing with this firsthand, with the mass migration of population like the Congolese people and other sub-Saharan African countries. Because mind you, we might be the Congolese Integration Network, but our the wealth of culture and language has positioned us to be a hub for multiple African countries, sub-Saharan Black African countries in the area for seeking support, and we've been gladly and honored to provide that to other African nations. The the feeling that's, I'm sure we're going to go deeper in it, but the global feeling of what is happening right now for us is to equip our people into resilience and how to project themselves into a future that they create. That's really the bottom line. Whether it is for Congolese or sub-Saharan African who are migrating here and having to deal with the current changes in policies, or the Africans, Congolese that are still on their homeland in their homelands right now, and they're going through whatever difficulty that as is pushing them to flee, and even pushing all this population that have fled all the way here to come all the way, to find a way to be resilient and find a way to create a space of growth and success, hope for themselves. So this is really the global feeling and the global message that we like to share through and through as we work through the current situation uh, in the United States and around the world.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And just a follow up questions because um, we talked about how immigrants are being targeted, right? Like how those who are undocumented, those who are or were playing by the book. And today, early today, we talked about. Uh, I was live covering the peace deal. I'm not sure if you were
Mhm.
following that between Congo and Rwanda, and it the your organization, Congolese Integration Network, really focus or serve primarily refugees. Like you help them, and that's the whole point of your organization. Integrate in the midst of having to crack down immigrants and restricting visas that we seen like international students are being prevented from coming or they see the visa being taken away for silly things, not even a crime, right? We see tourists being prevented to come here, and we travel ban that is affecting 12 countries and being expanded, and that's right now currently in discussion to 36 countries, including the DR Congo.
Yeah.
When the countries on there, the folks overstaying the visa does not surpass the folks from France, for example, or Argentina or other countries, but they're targeted. Um, in you and your organization, you are serving just not just students, but mostly and primarily refugees. Um, what's your take on this? I would say talks between on one hand you have uh, the government being tough on immigration, and on the other hand you have an ongoing war, 3 decades of war in the Congo, and a peace deal, supposedly peace deal being signed. Like, what's your take on that?
Oof. Yes, that's a very good question. Um, I'll say it's a multi-level answer as far as I'm concerned. The first level is I would like for this moment in this very exact time to be, I won't say wake up call. I mean, we've had a lot of situations that should have awakened us, but it should just be an alarm to invite Africans or displaced people to sit on the table with themselves and their communities and find a way to establish autonomy, authority, and resilience. Because just think about it: when you go somewhere and they refuse access to you. Meanwhile, the situation, the location you are in, is actually quite great, and it's the land, it's the space of the family, your family has left for you. I mean, why would you want to go somewhere that is denying access to you? That's the first stuff I want to talk about. So this is a moment for Africans to sit and find a way to create resilience. If the United States right now is finding, as a sovereign country, is finding the need, is sharing the narrative that they want to pause a little bit, and although in a very systemic racial way, are deciding that a group of people around the world cannot access because of overstayed visa or whatnot, why don't we sit and think about a way to grow our own space as African and open up our borders between African countries for easier circulation and to promote culture between us, the wealth of language and culture and of who we are and what we represent. That's the first level that I'll say. The second level is specifically about Congolese because I can only, although multiple nations in the world and in Africa are going through instability and maybe conflict and whatnot, I can, as a Congolese born and raised, I can speak. I can say that I'm only expert when it comes to the matters of my land. When it comes to the Congo, I believe that it it should remind us that we can only be our own liberators. Just the same way our organization was born with the idea of liberating ourselves because there was absolutely no platform such as this one before. And I'm sure it was a similar occasion, a similar founding idea that pushed you and your peers to organize the NYS. It was because something was not there. We decided to create a space to liberate ourselves with a clear goal. This should be a moment for us to think and say, look, we are being massacred in the land of our ancestors for the things, the blessing that the Lord has given us in our underground. And the natural reaction of a human being when you're being attacked, if it's not to defend yourself, is to flee. The Congolese people, we have fled for over 3 decades now. We have done it so much for all reasons, whether it is fleeing the rape or fleeing the killing, or there's some people who have fled the economic instability. We have students who can gracefully study in the Congo, but because of the lack of development, because when there's no peace, there's no development, we have students who have fled the Congo because they want to have a good education, right? We have people who have fled the Congo because they want to give a better life for their children. There's multiple people who are fleeing. People who are, you're seeing them crossing oceans, landing in Brazil, and braving all these other countries to come all the way up there. It's because in their homeland they're finding it hard to survive and thrive and be happy. Now, this should remind us that if we're getting to those borders and the door is being closed, what can we do to also liberate ourselves? Just like Gaten and his organization created a space to liberate, just like CN found a way to liberate, it's the time for the people, the Congolese people at large, including the diaspora. It's important to include the diaspora. Those who fled, those who went to encounter all the tragedies on the road, on their way to security, involve them in the conversation. And very, very often, and it's just the case of the agreement that was just signed today, that the diaspora is not included in the conversation of finding lasting solutions to problems. Meanwhile, you have this group of people who were brave enough to run away, did not die on their journey, and found refuge in a new place, and still decided to find a way to advocate, still decided to find a way to grow, nurture, create small economies, and even sending money back home. Why is it that we are able to, we have this opportunity to be important figures in supporting families when it comes to sending money back home or whatnot? But when it comes to these important agreements, the diaspora is not part of the people that they are asked to have a say in. We're not invited on the deciding table. We are not invited to be observers of implementation of such agreements or whatnot. So this is, the second level of the answer that I wanted to say, that the Congolese people, we should, or African people, whoever people who are who are dealing with of conflict, we should now start deciding of taking the matters in our own hands and finding a way to liberate ourselves in the midst of all this. And finally, just because I'm also an American person, I'm an American Congolese. As an American, living here for close to 2 decades, it's important to understand that the wealth of this country is made out of the mixture, the potluck that we represent, right? The mix of cultures. And we've seen how the American people, when they invest their time in finding out who is my neighbor, where they come from, and understand the struggle, and joining them and becoming an ally in the fight of whatever goal or cause they have. There's a powerful results and powerful things that come out of it. We've seen it with the people, the Jewish people. We've seen it with so many other cultures when the American people joined in to the fight as allies, and worked hard for a systemic peace to take place. That it also gives back to the American people in culture, in food, in culture, in food, in
Mhm.
human capital, and all the things that will continue making the United States the strong and amazing country that he has always talked about being. So those are the three levels when it comes to the current situation that I wanted to share with you. I hope it answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much. I think that's a really good segment to bring in Haley. Am I saying their name correctly? Haley?
Yes, Haley.
Okay, Haley. And just to give a broader context for folks, this is the first time that Haley and I talk, and also first time, obviously on Friends of the Congo um, channel. The reason why I wanted you to kind of like come and have this conversation with us, right, and join us in having this conversation because a couple weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, I posted this. It was first like a video that says that the police was targeting during club in downtown LA. They have been doing raids in underground clubs, um, and not just doing raids on things that are considered like that belongs to like immigrants that won't even go to like markets, folks, places where that's where you most likely gonna find immigrants, right? Obviously, it's profiled, and then there was also this message from Trump, President Trump, talking about as officers, and like I mentioned, how he wanted to do that, like reinforce immigration on radical Democrat states, blue states. And your comments really got my attention, Haley, and because you said this is why Black Americans, Black immigrants shouldn't have said it'll all the time why majority of Latinos were being targeted. It's all of us at risk. And connecting to what Mama Manuela just shared with us, Mama Manuela, she said that the Congolese folks, when it comes to initiatives, politics, or things that concern them, they are not invited at the table. You are saying, and I share what she's saying, and I agree with her, but I also share what you saying. You saying that they don't even want to come at the table to discuss certain things because they said they're not they're not involved, they're not concerned. And honestly, like that's the same feeling that I have or that I see in the Congolese community, in the African communities. When you do events, when you want to talk about certain things, they will tell you, "Oh no, 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 I don't want to talk about this. I don't do politics. Oh, I'm good."
Organizing is hard.
Exactly, organizing is hard. They will say, "You know what? I'm a F1 student. I came here on the visa. I'm legal. I'm documented. I don't want to protest. I don't want to join this conversation. I don't want to join this workshop. I don't want to come and speak up. Or why should we have this event? Even though folks that would participate are going to be immigrants, the folks that could most likely be targeted are immigrants, but they say that, you know what, I want to sit on a bench because I'm afraid or I'm just concerned. So that's what you was essentially saying, and that's the feelings that I got when I read your comments. But you got a lot of pushbacks. First, about how you feel about the issue, get your perspective on that, and then two, why do you think you got so much pushback? And I saw back and forth between you and another folks commenting on our post.
So, I think that essentially the animosity stems from the same source that we're fighting against, right? I mean, we have seen this over and over and over again when it comes to any example of colonization or white supremacy. One of the courses of action that is most useful in preventing progress is making sure that the oppressed groups are busy fighting each other instead of actually focusing on who is doing the oppressing. Um, I made my comment as someone who is within the community that I am calling out, and yet I still somehow didn't anticipate how angry people would be about what I said. And I considered it to be a very simple and very straightforward, even an inclusive type of comment. Um, I'm saying this as someone who has already been to multiple protests, someone who works in local government and who sees the people that are outside, who sees the people that are organizing, um, as someone who obviously is also on social media. I'm obviously speaking from my specific perspective. I was more so, if anything, I was anticipating people responding in terms of, oh, in my area, I haven't seen that. I've seen kind of, a lot of unity, a lot of inclusion. And I know a close friend of mine that is in Philadelphia, he said that he sees a lot of like Black immigrants and Black Americans really participating in the protests because they see the warning signs. But a lot of the comments that I got were actually the inverse, and people, Black Americans, trying to validate their reason for sitting down and the reason for not, taking the side of Latinos during this time. But something that, I mean, my heritage and my upbringing has made very true and clear to me is that there's actually not that much of a difference between, us and the other. Who is the other? A lot of them also assumed from my comments that I was, half Hispanic and half Black, but actually my Black and Hispanic family is the same. And so I'm not speaking to the outside. I'm speaking to what I would consider my own people, you know? Um, and weapons used against your neighbor will inevitably be used against you. These are very obvious violations of human rights, whether you are a citizen or not. I think that the really scary aspect here of othering is this concept that, for Black Americans, they have lived here for probably hundreds of years and they haven't seen the rights that they would like to see. They have been facing mass incarceration, violence, poverty. All of those things are enmeshed with one another. But immigrants face also similar circumstances. But to Black Americans, from what I gathered from the comments that I was getting, is that, immigrants, they chose to come here and to suffer. Basically, that they chose to take the risk. And, upon speaking to them, I was increasingly disappointed by how much they sounded like their conservative white, you know, peers in the community that they spent the last however long protesting against, wishing that they would stand up and march with them, wishing that they would prevent them from being, violated and attacked in the street by uniformed or not uniformed agents. They're using the same rhetoric that I have heard predominantly white people using to justify violence against Black Americans. But I mean, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to racial profiling, there's no way that an agent is going to look at a Caribbean and look at a Black American and know exactly what is the difference. You have to do the brutalizing first, questions later. So everyone who has ever been or would be a victim of racial profiling and racial-based violence is in fact in question here. That was my point. And I've just seen so much sort of like apathy and this labeling of this issue as a immigrant issue or a Latino issue. But when I saw that video that you posted, I wasn't surprised that they were going to a Nigerian club. I mean, what is next on the agenda for them? They're operating without any parameters at all across the country. If it's immigrants that they're looking for, they're going to look for them everywhere that people of color congregate. Like you said, markets, clubs, even like street parties, block parties, going into grocery stores. They're not going into Wegmans. They're not going into, a Trader Joe's. They're going into smaller, predominantly quote unquote ethnic grocery stores where they know that they're going to find the demographics that they're looking for. I just wish that we could look at this situation with a lot more solidarity. I mean, if police brutality, and I said this in the comments, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, police brutality was the issue in question. Mass incarceration was the issue in question. Trafficking was the issue in question. And all of those things are still, that's exactly what is going on today. We have too many people in our country already. Is that someone responding live?
That's a comment. Yes, it's Congo Unfiltered. So yeah.
Okay, so let me just address
and the
that
same
question.
person said that. Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, more than a third of what you consider the United States now is part of Mexico. Okay? Borders are made up. Borders are designed by people who wish to oppress, people who are in power, who want resources, people in power who want unrestrained power. And we have seen them change all the time. All the time. So when you tell Mexicans to go back to Mexico, there are Mexicans that have been on their land from before the border was drawn. So where exactly are they going? They're currently in what we now call New Mexico or Arizona or in Southern California or in Texas, but they are in Mexico. Let's be clear about that. And let's also be clear about another thing. Human rights are not a scarce resource. Human rights is not fresh water. Human rights is not, old growth forests and trees. Human rights is not gasoline that's being, mined from the bottom of the ocean. Human rights actually can belong to every single person. It's not a scarce resource. So there's no risk to your rights by someone else coming here. Unless, of course, you are the one who's interested in the power play.
Right. And someone, I think the first interviewee was saying, how can you be illegal on the stolen land? As you were mentioning, that in New Mexico, Arizona, part of Texas, they're all part of Mexico. So how can you be legal on the stolen land?
Absolutely. And who is to decide what is too many people in this country already? Who decides that? Should we prevent people from having more babies or something? Is there a eugenics conversation that person would like to bring to the table? I mean, what kind of comment really is that? Where is that coming from? And if we really want to see less refugees, then we should be much less invested in causing conflict in other countries where we're seeing refugees coming from. Because if we did not start wars in Central America, like we did in the 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe we wouldn't be seeing such volumes of people trying to run away to the United States. And I'm sure that this place is not their first choice. It's just out of sheer necessity that they do come. And it's absolutely hypocritical as a nation for us to demonize the same people that we have brutalized, that we've extracted from, that we have toppled governments in their countries, I mean, we had no problem infiltrating when it was on their side of the soil, so to speak. But now that they are here, it's a problem of national security. I don't buy that.
Yeah.
It's a
Emmanuel,
new
you know, you
form.
want to chime in? Yeah.
It's a new form of colonization, because I mean, I'm from a country that was colonized initially, fully owned by the Kingdom of Belgium, and eventually colonized by the government of Belgium before all this. And I think I had a conversation with my godfather, who's an American, a Caucasian man, about colonization, and I said, I was asking, I was young at the time, of course, I did not have all the information I have now, but I was asking him, why don't the colonizer just come back and have better agreements with the owners of the land, so that they can mutually build this place, and they can work here, and and be with the locals, and and just thrive together. And his answer, and this is a professor of economics and demography, he told me that the current powers of the of Western nation will no longer want to do this kind of colonization, because it will be too costly for them, too expensive. Yes, that's what it says. Say they can get whatever they used to get way cheaper now, without having to build infrastructure. They go and fund wars. They don't have to care about the welfare, organize hospitals, or build the roads or the schools like they used to do during the colonies. And they're able to still colonize without having to invest in the economies and the infrastructures the way it was done before. And now Haley makes a good point. Like, why don't we just, I like what the point you made at the beginning of protesting, like we are not part of it. And I agree with you. I'm right there with you. As I said, organizing is hard. We've been
Mm.
doing this for a little over 10 years. It's hard. Well, I mean, we just set up a whole, it was grassroots, but a work of the art. We had a whole exhibition about the Congolese Holocaust in our offices, a matter of the Congo, for the people of the Congo. And of course, we wanted to bring awareness to local communities, but this was also a space for the Congolese people to show up and find out like what is happening, a way to commemorate the lives of those who have who lost to. We did have some Congolese people who showed up. Those who did not show up, I really think it was their loss. But those who showed up, they were awakened. It was a different conversation that was happening in their hearts and in their minds and around the room. So when we show up, things do happen. Things do change. But I'll also like to bring up the other side of the spectrum, because as a nonprofit and an NGO, we are working directly with people, and we are dealing with direct family issues, and real fears from real people. And these real people, some of them, when you're asking them to protest or to come with you, and I'm sure it's happening for with Latinx communities too, is that they have been living in fear from their countries of origin already. Fears of oppression, for not having the space to speak up. They fled because they did not have opportunity to speak up over there. They came here and they're like, okay, we clearly can see that if we speak up, we may have people, telling us some things that will scare us even more about our freedom in our new place of refuge. So that's sometimes they are afraid to show up and protest because of that. And
Mm.
but there is a solution to that. The solution is having allies. We need people who can, rally with us. Those who have the freedom to speak. That if you feel in all honesty that there's absolutely no other place that they can deport you to, if you come out and speak, you come out and protest, that's the kind of ally we want. I had a lot of my former colleagues who marched down just 2 weeks ago about the ICE situation. And I was really proud of them taking the stance. For all the other people who are afraid to speak up
Right.
because they already know that this is a place of refuge for them. They came here to find refuge, and they're even hoping that it could be a space for refuge for some of their family members, friends who are still struggling in the in their countries of origin that's dealing with conflict, famine, and whatnot. So if they're already feeling the pressure here, and it's clear, it's on the open, it's all the way from the White House, that they may not be so welcome here. So it gets really hard for them to come out. But I'm also just having other conversation with other Black Americans who are saying, yes, we are not using our capital space enough. We're not using our human capital enough in speaking up. We've been here, we've learned the ins and outs of the system. We understand how these things work, and we are here at home too. And we represent an opportunity to also speak up. So there is definitely a movement. It's very slow. We all wish that it was bigger and stronger and faster, and we will
Yeah.
continue. We will, platforms such as this one is to encourage allies to really stand up. And if you're not much aware, don't be afraid to live in your ignorance. Come out and say that I am not aware. Enlighten me, educate me, teach me. So I'm standing firm in knowledge when I'm going out there to protest. I'd rather deal with someone like that than someone living in ignorance and just perpetrating things that are not so true about
Yeah.
the people that are struggling. And just like you said so well, that it was not their first choice to end up over here. There's some people who are coming from very beautiful places with blue skies, wonderful weather, and sandy beaches. And I always like to say, like, something I really miss about my own country, the smell of hot sand after a rainy day. That
Mhm.
smell, I've never smelled it any other place than in my beautiful Congo, and I miss it too. But I'm not, I was forced to leave it too. So when someone is going through all these hoops, they really want allies. So we also want to, when we have conversations like this, we don't want to necessarily condemn it. I think that's what your comment was on the online platform. You more want to just wake people up and shake us up and say, hey,
Yeah.
Mhm.
no, look here, this is what's happening. Let's do
Yeah.
something about it. Let's use our capital knowledge and the integration that we have acquired over the centuries, and also stand on the fight, that we've given on this land, that is, slowly but surely being recognized, of all the enslaved people who have worked hard to liberate themselves. Let's stand
Absolutely.
on their shoulders to liberate other communities who maybe did not have the exact same history of segregation, but is still being segregated right now, and still seeing their future and right for freedom being stripped away from themselves and their families. So I really love what you said. This was just
Yes.
wonderful.
Hey, thank you so much, Haley. You want to jump in? I know you've been.
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, I just want to recognize that a lot of people don't usually think about this as being a human right, but freedom of movement is a human right.
Mm.
People should be allowed to move, to claim spaces for themselves if it is not at the expense of others. This the control over the movement of people of color and the monitoring and policing of people of color is one of the most effective arms of colonization. And as I mentioned before, this is something that we've seen historically, it's something that we see now, and it will continue as long as it's not really, really pressed. As long as we continue to buy into this idea that there are only certain people who belong in certain places and certain people who don't, that is entirely mythical. And I think everyone can figure out who it is that decided that in the first place. I mean, pilgrims never belonged here, and yet they remained here They did not engage in ethical practices in order to be here. And I think that it's an incorrect assumption, and I had to address this in the comments on Instagram too. It's an incorrect assumption to think that that Hispanics don't face the same kind of social and racial hierarchy that people of color see here in the United States whose family have been here. It's also untrue to say that Latinos are not descendants of slaves like African Americans are, because they, in fact, are largely descendants of slaves as well. I believe there were more, several times more slaves sent to just the island of Haiti and DR than there were imported in the entire United States during the slave trade. So to say that we have entirely disconnected roots, that we don't experience anywhere near the same things, to say that immigrants have some sort of privilege that others don't, here in the United States is just completely incorrect. And actually, it, it it's not really supposed to be a competition of oppression. In the words of my friend, he calls it the oppression Olympics. He says, you know, when there's two groups that are trying to come together, and it's just, you know, we're so focused on what we've been through and whose experience was worse and who did more at this time and who, you know, didn't participate in this or who showed up for that. That's not the point. That's not the point. Those are all just distractions. Because if we can recognize what oppression is, if we can really put our finger on it, which I believe we can by now, we should all be able to come together under this issue. I think that it's absolutely terrifying that children by the hundreds of thousands can be taken away from their families with no information on these children at all. We don't know where they came from. We don't know their names. We don't have papers on them. We don't have anywhere to send them. This is absolutely human trafficking right under our noses. And to think that these ICE raids, I mean, don't they just make it easier for other human traffickers? When we see young women and children snatched off of the streets and nobody says anything, everyone just films it. I mean, anyone can do it now. You just have to drive something that looks like a large Chevy SUV and wear a vest and wear sunglasses. You can cover your face. Nobody will say anything. I would like to know where are these children? Where are these people? Where are these men? They are all institutionalized. That is the goal. That is the goal of the system, is to institutionalize people of color. It has always been that way. And I know that this is a large issue for Black Americans, which is why I'm just so, you know, I'm so disappointed and mind boggled at the pushback that I've gotten, you know. Oh, Latinos have been racist and discriminatory. Latinos are anti-Black. I was called anti-Black and racist and ignorant for my comment, for saying basically that everyone should care about what's going on, and for saying that Black Americans in particular have a vested interest in this conflict. I don't think that, I mean, it's not convenient by any means. It's not pleasant. It's definitely an unfair distribution of responsibility on people of color, but this has always been the case. There has never been a largely white march during the civil rights movement that ended up giving us our rights. That never happened. This country has actually never really seen drastic change by peaceful protest ever. I understand the concerns for safety, but I'm also really angered at the understanding that a lot of the power that we give these agents is imaginary. A lot of it is, and maybe this is like really radical, but I mean, really zoom out. We outnumber them by the millions.
Mhm.
And yet, when we see that kind of violence being exercised, we freeze. We don't know what to say. We don't say anything. We don't talk about it. We don't. Normalizing the violence is an inherent aspect of being able to continue with the violence.
There was a
I
question.
wanted to,
Oh, Emanuela, go ahead,
I want
mom.
to interject quickly because
Yeah,
it could be a little bit related to it might touch on the comments or whatnot, but
yeah.
uh, it's the power of communication. This is what's really driving the driving force of all this conversations, and the truth sets us free, right? The truth sets us free. It's we can listen to the truth of our fellow Americans saying, well, these riots or this protest are causing loss, or the certain illegal immigrants are I guess some say, oh, some of them are killing people. I mean, or
Less
whatnot.
than 1%, but
Yeah, but we can also say, in the case for the Congo, for example, that during the colonization, 15 million Congolese were killed.
great loss.
15 million Congolese were killed during colonization.
Unspeakable loss in the
And
Congo. It was a
as we
terrible,
went
terrible
out
time.
of the colonization, we also had the case where the United States of America, American leaders, got into the business of the Congo and participated in the killing of more Congolese. Those are also important lives, just like we are agreeing that American lives are important. I am in agreement. American lives are important. We don't want anybody to be murdered. The same way, we don't want the Congolese to be murdered. We don't want the African to be murdered. We want them to be able to live happily ever. We don't want the outsider to come murder anybody, right?
Mhm.
So it's important to understand that, to point the finger at the history, that we know that we have to understand the history as a whole. Now, the problem that we may have is that we are not the one who wrote those history books. So it's maybe omitted that information of the
Mhm.
15 million Congolese people from the Congo with the big K that were killed during
By
the
design, I mean, it's by design.
always by
Mhm.
design, so that we can have people commenting on the internet telling us that, well, immigrants are coming and killing people. Do you know the history that we inherited, and how those peaceful people living in their beautiful kingdom were initially killed and pushed out of their peace and quiet, causing all this turmoil of killing or whatnot. Now, again, we do not support the killing, we do not support anything, but if there was crusades in Europe where people also were killed and lost their lives, and that's when systemic change happened in Europe, that's how it shows you that's how human beings work. That's how we process situation. Now, we also need to understand the concept of borders and certain agreements that we've come with amongst countries when it comes to population fleeing and seeking for refuge. Yes, we call them here quote unquote illegal, but these are some standards that even the United States and other countries have agreed to. That as human beings, when someone is knocking on your door and they say they're in danger, we have agreed to open our door, to let them in, listen to them, understand what is going on with them. We might call it illegal entry, but really, it's the way human beings relate to one another when you're coming seeking for help.
It's humanness. It's
It
inherent
is.
humanness.
Yes. And it's part of US laws. You call it illegal, but it's part of that's why there's proceeding about refugees, there's proceeding about asylum seekers, asylum and things like that. And we call them asylum seekers. We call all these codes that the United States government has when it comes to citizen to the pathway to citizenship or the pathway
They
to
call
entry
all
in the
immigrants aliens.
Exactly. There's a reason why these words came up. It's because there is some way of we have categorized it, and it's political propaganda that likes to call it illegal. But there is a process that has been set in due place by very intelligent people that are command in high places that thought of their own history, like you just mentioned, when the pilgrim came, they realized, wow, we came in this place, we were asylum seekers. They were flee, they fled as asylum seekers. They're like, if we had to go through a situation like this, we need to make sure that as founding fathers, we come up with ways to make sure that people are welcome in this place in that way. And it's a founding concept and principle in this country that has welcomed us. And we find a people that welcomed us, regardless of the way we landed here. They still allowed us to continue being on this land. So I wanted to stretch out the fact that the people that are coming all the way here, they're coming all the way in the United States borders. They are resilient people. They are people who are coming to bring a future to the United States. They are coming to bring a future for their children and participate. They may see themselves as people seeking refuge today, but they always project themselves in the future and say, I will bring this, that, and this.
Well,
If
because
I am the
in order
opportunity.
to immigrate and in order to even be a refugee, you need to be someone who believes in the future in the first place. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you wouldn't have taken that drastic step.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
oh, Emmanuel, sorry. You wanna
Yeah,
maybe
I
finish?
just
Yeah.
wanted to just
Go ahead. Yeah.
went down to say that beside the fact that a lot of people are going through, we need to make sure that we understand that people are going through the legal proceeding. When they're coming, they're staying here. They follow whatever the USCIS said that you have to file within this many days, and once you file these many days, you have to appear in front of a judge or have an interview and whatnot. Present yourself, present your facts, organize, get the lawyer or whatnot, going through all the element that the law is requiring them to follow and following whatever process, due process, right? That's they're being asked. And I also like to stretch out the fact that this is what non-profits that are supporting refugees and immigrants, they are doing that too. So
Mhm.
organizations that are serving those populations, even those that they call undocumented or alien immigrants, they are following the law of the land when it comes to processing things like this. And it's also our duty when we're doing these things to support, to also bring light to the inherent problem, the causes, because it allows the country the country that welcomes those population to understand the cause of those movements. I really see a big disconnect a lot in my peers when they
Yeah,
see this population moving. Oh, why the country coming to our borders? You know, it's important to think about this thing. It might be fun and like sexy. You're thinking, oh, we're gonna go bomb these places. You don't realize that it's not just an economic impact. There's always a reaction to an action,
Mhm.
and high migration, population migration, is a reaction to some of the economic decisions that we take here in the United States, whether it is to support an ally
absolutely.
or to make sure that our oil is secure or whatnot. There are reactions to it, right? So we cannot be all like, astonished and stunned when we're having large migrating population coming in. And you cannot always expect a human being to wait at a refugee camp until you do all the processes for them to show up. We are like water. If you put water somewhere and you block it, it continues to pile up. Water will find another way to get to where it needs to go because water flows. And that's human being. You cannot just pile human being at a refugee camp that has they live like animals. It's really important for people to see how refugees live, you know, like animals, and finding a way to live there for 14, 20 years and not giving a future to their children. Water will find a way to come across. So it's important to us to collaborate with the diaspora, collaborate with international organizations to find a way to deliver humanitarian processes. Not, I'm not talking about aid, self-sustaining processes to the local people,
Very important.
agreements that give
Yeah.
people real freedom for them to live. Like, just think about the fact, like, I can, if both my grandmothers are dead, but if they were alive and something was happening in the region, I would be so scared. I want them to come here quickly in any other way, right? Because I want my grandma to survive, to be alive. But you know which grandma who's lived 80 years in a beautiful place want to leave their friends and their local food just to show up some place new? No, 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 nobody wants to do that. But if their survival depends on it, they will have no choice than to fight. So a lot of people that are showing up here, they absolutely have no choice. And the percentage of those criminals, because the human being is flawed. We have criminals in any population. There are criminals. The percentage of criminals, of course, there are some, but I think it's not even a percentage, a one
No, it
percent
is not.
that
And
are
we
doing
know the stats on that. We know that. And I have this conversation so many times. Like, immigrants are not, they have no vested interest in drawing attention to themselves. None. They have no vested interest in trying to get the police called at their house and, robbing somebody, hurting somebody. They have no vested interest in that. Actually, we know, statistically speaking, that white male, US born citizens are the most dangerous person still to this day.
I
That
I
is
I,
the
I I
case.
wouldn't I wouldn't phrase it like that. So, but I put some. Let me just show this. Uh, there you go. No, I
I
think this is
can't read
better.
that very well.
Let me maybe zoom in. Yeah, I wouldn't phrase it like that because the chat right now is going crazy and talking about like illegal immigrants. You have to come here legally, and I think Mama Manuel, like you mentioned that like supposedly illegal committing crimes, killing people.
Why wouldn't
This
you phrase it
stats,
like that?
this stats, uh, because we're trying to educate, right? And I think the way, and Mama Manuela say that again, like the way we phrase, the way we communicate is very important too, right? And trying to respond to them, I'm not gonna go ahead, and that's what I'm doing right now. I wouldn't go ahead and then attack. And I think there was also a question for you, Haley, regarding your stance and some of this the comments that you made. I wouldn't go ahead and attack someone, but I will speak in addressing what has been mentioned and what has been said in terms of like uh, immigrants committing crimes. For example, when we know when that has been posted, 2025 fiscal year, that the number of detainees by ICE pose no threats. 35,000. So again, it's not even about committing crimes because if we have to go back into the whole definition, okay, you overstayed your visa, okay, you crossed the borders illegally, that itself is not even a crime. I think that's the bottom line. And I had this conversation with my friends. Um, is a conservative Caucasian in the military, and actually I have the greatest political conversation I've had with them was with him, and I would tell them that right now the law the way it is, when you cross the borders illegally, you're not committing a crime, so you're not a criminal. So I think first the law is clear, and if people are against that fact, they need to first change the law, right? And I saw in the
absolutely.
comments, someone talk about due process as well, right? The due process is really important because there are also important cases in the U.S. And again, I'm in a civil engineering backgrounds with a few years ish in activism, so I'm not a lawyer, but I know there have been cases precedents in which you saw that due process does not care about someone's nationalities or immigration status. So in terms of that, people have that rights of due process. But when you have a number of like the 35,000 people that ICE arrested pose absolute no threat. That to me is insane, right? It's like where all the resources is being sent, money being spent right now to arrest, and people are. It's well within the rights, right, to enforce the law. But I'm just saying that is that really the best way to spend tax dollars,
No.
money. And another, I saw in the comments, someone talks about, oh, immigrants are taking our jobs, and all those. These are the comments that I keep hearing again and again and again. And again, it's Congo Unfiltered, so I'm gonna be as blunt as I can. If talking about an immigrant who came from a country, let's just pick Congo because it's Congo Unfiltered, where people speak French in the Congo. If somebody from the Congo comes in the US and within 5, 6 years, or 10 years takes your job when he didn't speak the language, he probably has no education because I know how the system works. They don't accept degrees from back home. You have to start over. If that person who spoke little to no English a few years ago is able to take your job, maybe you didn't deserve to have that job, right? Because if in 10 years that person had the time to learn the language, get some skills, what did you do in that 10 years? And also, that's the question that Myra, uh, she actually responded, in the sense that uh, it's really not about uh, uh, the legality anymore, because we also see that
Right.
that even folks with visa are also being targeted, and that's fine, right? But then you need to be honest, and it's not about people being legal, because even those who have done the things the way they're supposed to, and even those who on temporary visa are still being targeted. And there are also like another fact that I wanted to show, but I haven't been able to find it. It's like also the amount of people who overstay the visa, and when you look at the list of people who have been banned, right, the travel ban, and it's to me it's crazy, quick, because you don't even see that number comparable to the numbers when you have to dig into French people from France, in insane numbers of French folks coming here and overstay the visa, but they're gonna overlook them, right? And insane number of people from the UK come in the US and overstay the visa, but we don't address that issue. But we address the issue. We want to focus on folks that are literally coming here to better their lives because they have absolutely no choice because of the UN foreign policy that has been implemented. Because that's what we witness today. We have a peace deal that has been signed, and on in that peace deal, and those are comments that I see internally in our conversation. It's like the so-called peace deal, the M23. M23 was mentioned three times during that conversation, and one of the three is in the glossary. The FDLR in that peace deal was mentioned 43 times, and when we actually watched that on live, they actually didn't even mention the M23 when we were actually watching it live, right? So people are gonna have to go and dig and read it. But like when it comes to Rwanda invading the Congo, creating chaos in the Congo, creating this influx of refugees that organization like Congolese Integration Network have to take care of, and many
Mhm.
others, right? Then you look at the way the peace deal is being framed. That peace deal is being framed and place remove the burden on Rwanda, who's the aggressor, and says that they need to end that defensive measure, because the U.S. then, the UN's foreign policy then, who was able to draft that peace accord, frame it as the Rwanda needs to end the defensive measure when Rwanda is deep in Congolese territory,
It is.
controlling over
It's an
100
oppressor.
territories,
It's not
killing
defending.
3 to 9,000 Congolese, displacing 7 million people. And you're gonna say when it comes to Rwanda actually creating chaos and also condemned by the US, including the US at the UN
Yes.
Security Council 15-0, that they have been violating international law, committing war crimes, but you're gonna tell them that they need to end the defensive measure because being in a country illegally, killing folks, raping is not enough. That's a defensive measure because they need to protect themselves. Fine, they need to protect themselves. But what do you think will happen to the people, to the population,
Hmm.
that the country that you fund, that the country that you provide weapons, that you provide money, is able or allowed to kill with impunity? Like
Hmm.
we said, that would create a flux of refugees. And whether or not you like it, and people say, oh, you know what, there are too many people here. Fine, but you have been selling, the US has been selling to everyone, including those cool, poor countries, that the US is, it's the American dream, right? You can come in the US and being able to succeed. And there are actually successful folks, stores, immigrants. So that's perfectly designed to attract people from the outside. So I think the question of whether or not we should close the borders and let people in, it's maybe it's posed the wrong way. I think it's like you don't want people to come in, right? Like, and maybe stop lying about the legality of things. You just don't want immigrants, period, because they don't look like
Right.
you. Then perhaps don't create war and chaos. Don't prop
Right.
up dictators in other countries. The Congolese refugees has skyrocketed in terms of how many folks came in the U.S. in 2019. But what happened in 2019? We had a president who was literally handed powers. He never won the election. He was
Mhm.
given powers, and you look at the numbers: 2019, 2018, 2017. For a country that had a peaceful transition of power, nobody can explain why that country in 2019 that had a peaceful transition of power, we have such a huge number of refugee in the US compared to other years. So there is definitely the US components, the UN foreign policy components into that. But I wanted to make sure that I'm actually addressing um, the question, the issue of saying that immigrants are criminals or immigrants are committing crimes.
And
But
Beto, I wanted to add something too,
mhm,
specifically that when we have forums and conversations like this, it's never specifically to targeting a person as far as our President Donald Trump. And
mhm,
as human beings, and I say we are flawed as human beings. We're born flawed. So we have
100%.
good things about ourselves and also good things about ourselves, which will be true for an administration, a government, or whatnot. And it's going to be the same for this government too. There's going to be some very good thing that this administration will do for people collectively, and there will be some things that are not going to be so good. Just like during the Democrats running this country, we had something to say about what they were doing that was not so good that we didn't like. The same way it's gonna happen, and that's the process of democracy, right?
Mhm.
That's just what it is. But it
Yeah.
does not mean because in this case, in this situation, immigration is a question that we cannot talk about it because this is what our president is honing on right now, and that's what is the topic of conversation. Someone asked in the chat if it's like they were told that crossing the border is a crime, and I want to, we are all academians here. We've been educated, and it's all about, we talk about truth here. And according to the United States law, it's what they call unlawful crossing if you don't have proper authorization, and it can be a violation of immigration law. Now, it can be different in other countries, but we're talking about the United States here. So we're gonna remain in the framework of the U.S. And as I said, it could be an unlawful entry. However, seeking asylum is not a crime. Even if someone crosses the border without papers, without a visa or whatnot, under US and international law, people have the right to seek asylum regardless of how they enter the country. That's why I was saying earlier that the term illegal is just it's really political propaganda. Because if we really are to go deeper in the documentation, of the United States law, this great country that we live in, it's an amazing country of a lot of great things, a lot of great people as well that we are part of. This is what the law says. Immigration violations are typically civil offenses, not criminal, unless they involve re-entry after deportation on fraud. So even if this person, like I say, that's crossing the border without proper authorization is a violation of immigration law, But immigration violation is not a criminal. It's not a criminal offense. It is a civil offense, so it's not
Yeah.
criminal.
So
So it's
you're not a criminal for crossing the borders illegally. That's essentially,
it's not a
unless the
criminal
law changes tomorrow. That'll be a
unless the
different
law
story.
changes tomorrow. But
Yeah.
currently, this is what the United States says. Again, I'm not talking about other countries. I'm talking about the laws of the United States. So the people that are showing in this border, at least, again, I can only say I'm expert in the matter of Congolese people. They're not. We are very resilient people. We don't like to cause drama. I mean, the problems are coming to our borders actually
Hmm.
and crossing and terrifying us. And if you knew what was happening in the Congo is beyond the power of the trend of growing businesses or winning that our president Donald Trump is sharing. It's beyond that. It's about humanity. It's about children being violated from the age of 3 months old. I mean, it would be great if you can share the speech of Nobel Peace Prize Dr. Mukwege that has the subtitle in English to hear about a nation that's being killed just because of the looting of minerals and agreement that funds arms and arsenals of countries like the great United States of America. We want that change to happen, and these people are fleeing because who will want their 3 month old to be raped? Who in this world? We want their wife to be raped in front of them and their daughters to be lined up in front of them, being hit on the head and skull wide open. Who in this world will like that? Who? We want
Yeah.
to see themselves degraded that way. Men are living with tremendous mental health that some of them are dying with. Some women are carrying, they're bearing pregnancies of the people who violated them. There's some people that are separated and they will never ever. We just got a message on Facebook on Monday from someone who's looking for their father, and they just send us a message on Facebook. Maybe Congolese Integration Network might know someone who might know where their father are. People are separated that way. And we have men who are no longer able to look at their wives in the face. They are deciding to leave and abandon them because they were not able to defend them to the rebels who put their arms, you know, attach their arms and rape their women and daughters and sisters in front of them. Just think about a man who's supposed to be a protector to see that they are stripped away of that God given authority.
Emmanuel, I have a question for you. I think it actually comes from the audience, and then I'm going to go to Haley. Someone asked, "Who's doing that?" Because I know you mentioned that Congress Integration Network had an event, and you and I actually talked about that a few weeks ago, or maybe it was last month, about honoring the death and commemorating, I would say, the death. Other folks like the Congress Action Youth platform talks about Genocost. You guys wanted to
Yeah,
call it differently, but it's the same idea,
it
same
is.
principle, same spirit. But in terms of like who is doing that and
Okay.
why, like the killing that you just mentioned, that
Yes.
again, as we mentioned, that killings forces people to leave their home, and then that creates what folks seems to be not okay with, which is immigration or migration.
Yeah. And we agree, and we also adhere to the same idea, the principle of the general cost of the Congo. It is a general cost, and I really hope you can also drop in the website of the general cost for people to understand that this is coming all the way from before the colonization has stopped. Um, and it's important to mention that the United States has been mingling in the matters. Again, not the United States people, but the United States government as he represents its people, mingling in the matters of the Congo from the time of Lumumba. And Patrice Emery Lumumba was a man who wanted to change the looting of the Congo, which happened from the Kingdom of Belgium. This space, my country was private property of the King of Belgium. Then, after so much pressure, passed around the Berlin Conference to the government of Belgium, and eventually, with independence, was supposedly led to the end of the Congolese people. But understanding liberation, true liberation, happens with collaboration. And the Western powers were not okay with that. So from that time to now, the perpetrator of this war and this killing are the interests of the very same big companies and corporations that are today proudly living in wealth in the United States. From the companies looting diamond, getting it at costs that are not regulated by the Congolese people, from them using the strength of local U.S. agencies to infiltrate the Congolese people and establish leaders that they've bought out, and perpetrating this culture of that I like to call the elephant in the room of corruption that the United States sometimes calls lobbying in the Congo. Those are the reason for what's happening there. So it's the continuation of the colonization without the framework of colonization to fund, to be able to have the raw materials to make our necklaces, to fund the raw materials to make our arsenal in our army, coltan, uranium, and to allow us, when I mean us, I mean the global us, to have the strong arsenal to scare our neighbor because I have a stronger army than the other. The companies that are making our phones to have long lasting batteries, our cars to have long lasting batteries, so we can flaunt our wealth to our neighbors and our friends to say that I own this, I have this car or one not. These are the companies that are participating in those murders in on the Congolese land, and that are causing, they are funneling money, they are paying those rebels, they're giving them guns. I mean, just think about it. Where can a rebel stand deep down in the Congolese forest have such heavy artillery to come and wipe out an entire village? Where are they going to find the money or the ability
Weapons better
to
than the United Nations, better than
exactly?
South
How,
Africa.
how are they getting there?
Yeah.
Think about it. Well, you have to understand that these companies, these powerful companies that we can name it, have ties to how the United States does business elsewhere, outside of the United States, are supporting these things. They are supporting these rebels. They're supporting the looting and the killing of my people. And we will never stop talking about it. And just like Gaten said, there's so many documentation that have been published that clearly state these things. It's out there on the open. But because the perpetrator are have money on the side, and there are the powerful people that are fueling the economy in certain places at the expense of the lives and the families of other countries. We are, the communication of this thing, of this situation, is never coming up to the surface, but we want to make sure that is coming to the surface. We want, as a diaspora, to talk about it. We want the collaboration of local people with diaspora, first, to resolve the immediate issue, that is just human not having clean water to drink, not having food, not having proper medication or hygiene installation for them to just live basic human lifestyle need, right? So our organization is partnering with people to be able to provide such support to create a resilient people, not just aid, but to sustain people to have a new normal, while we advocate for proper policies, real agreements that are people focused, then business supported, to be able to provide peace and lasting peace for Congolese people. Then it will trickle down. Eventually, it will trickle down to the migration and the movement of population towards the north and eventually the United States.
Yeah, thank you so much. And really quick before going to Haley, there was a question about like whether or not the peace deal is conditional on the mineral trade with the U.S. Yes and no. We discussed that earlier. And we talked about this when we were covering live the peace deal being signed. It was heavily on. It was heavily on. It was heavily on obviously the U.S. Wanting to make deal with minerals because China has been uh, winning using Donald Trump's term, and you cannot do any type of business when there is a state of when you're in a state of war, right? Like there is absolutely hard for folks to come in and like investors to come in when they are constantly have to like shield away from like from bombs and stuff like that. So it was very important for Americans, for U.S. investors on for the economic standpoints, the capitalist standpoints, to make sure that there are conditions for them to secure those minerals. They unfortunately only focus on that aspects in the way that they did, thinking that okay, the issue is Rwanda and Congo, uh, without really first addressing the real issue when it comes to Rwanda's aggression. And they phrase it in a way that remove the burden on Rwanda and accountability. Second, they also remove the accountability on the Congolese government in terms of corruptions, in terms of also Congolese also themselves killing their own people. But there are some stuff in there, and I'm trying to find that was published by Bloomberg, and I'm just gonna try to okay, a U.S. brokered peace deal between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda will include the outlines of a separate economic integration pact between the two nations to be concluded within 3 months. People with direct knowledge of the talk said a draft economic framework includes plans for mineral revenue sharing, rail and roads, transportation infrastructure, and the development of 760 million hydropower plants on the two nations border. One of the people said they may also collaborate on electricity production from methane within the Lake Kivu, which also spans the boundary. The person says the economic pact will be dependent on the implementation on Friday peace deal, which happened this at 1 p.m. today Eastern time, which both nations will pledge to cease hostilities and stop supporting armed groups in mineral-rich Eastern Congo. So, yes and no. So, obviously, what's important, and you also can see the way things are being framed for the U.S. for at least an American interest, and I can understand that, is strategic in terms of like, okay, there are all these minerals that Mama Emanuela mentioned, cobalt, coltan, things are being used for cell phones, EV batteries, for electric vehicles, even for when it comes to weapons, right? We're talking about like how the cobalt and are being used, copper are being used um, in the automobile industry, in aerospace industry. So yes, Congo is very important. So they need to make sure that they are actually taking over, not really taking over, that would be a really wrong way to say that, but that um that the Congo is not just solely right the property of China, because that's the way they are right now framing it. Because in 2019, when the president came here, he came to power, the president of the Congo, in a way that wasn't democratic. And
Yeah.
because he wasn't democratic, because he was through corruption, I will say he doesn't answer to the people. He only answered to the higher bidder. And China comes in, they really purely in a really capitalistic point of view.
Mhm.
Which that's why sometimes I'm really surprised when people say that, oh, China is communist. No, they're actually capitalists. They're actually better
It's all
at
about
better
business.
than America in doing
Yeah.
capitalism.
Yeah.
But China, with that capitalist mindset, they came and said, okay, we want to do business with you, but we are different than America. We are different than the European. We're not going to tell you what to do. We're not going
Yeah.
to say a word about human rights abuses or anything, but we're going to provide you with the power and resources for you to be profitable as well as us. So that's what happened. And fast forward, the US has lost I would say its influence on the continent,
Mhm.
particularly in the Congo, where you have now China owning, and then they got it in a really fair way, right? Um, but they now own like almost 80% of the companies in the
Mm-hmm.
Congo. And then the US is like, okay, we cannot continue to, because right now, if we want a cobalt from the Congo, which owns about 70% of the world's 60,
Yeah.
70% of the world's coltan and stuff that we needs to buy from China. We don't want to do that. And on top of that, China also processes most of the minerals.
Mm-hmm.
So what they've been trying to do to counter China is being more present. And how do you do that? According to right now, the American foreign policy is to make sure that there is peace in the Congo, and they're doing that the way they're doing. But again, without ever addressing the issue of corruption within the Congolese government, without ever addressing the issue of human rights and international laws violation on behalf by Rwanda. So it's really complex. I think we lost Haley. I'm not sure if Haley is still there, but there was a really good question about truth. Otherwise, I think that we can
And you made a good
some
point about
yeah.
the entry of the Chinese business people in the Congo, and I mean, I've seen the impact of their presence for sure. And I agree with you that the United States, who was, as I said, one of the biggest manipulators of the wealth and business in the Congo for the majority of the 70s, from the 60s all the way to the early 2000s, really felt themselves at a disadvantage, right? And it was almost like they were running behind the clock trying to catch up to China. But of course, the United States has their way of doing business, and they have their way of trading, which is honorable in some ways. Uh, and I think we also appreciated the presence of China and the way they did business in the Congo, because he also had its good side, because they brought, the economy was moving with their presence. But of course, it has also its downfall for the population, because again, it's not about ownership of the population. It's really, again, our land, our space, and wealth being, almost, it's we're someone else coming and taking over what we own right in front of our eyes. Um, the opportunity that the United States has right now, and the good thing about collaborating with the United States, is we've seen the track record of the United States working. When they come in, they get whatever they get, because it's all of the United States always put the U.S. interests first, of course. But they do leave sometimes they do leave a set of people that are trained. They do leave a little bit of the way of doing business or the way of building roads. And this is something that we've noticed that the Chinese people did not. Like you just mentioned, they didn't really care about changing, governance, or teaching people how to do better governance or improving their policies. And it was more just, hey, we're here for doing business, we're going to get whatever we need to get, and you keep moving the way we want to keep moving your way. So it's important for the Congo to do business with the United States, and we do see our interest as a nation to do business with the Congo. But we hope that it's going to be beneficial for the people, not just for the current government. And that's why I think we are loudly speaking about inviting the diaspora into seeing this agreement. Let us see what was written there, and let us be part of the observing committee of the application, of the rollout of these agreements, so that we can actually have a say in, like, hey, we've been around the American people, we know how they do things here, and we see how successful it's been. And this agreement, the rolling out of it, is lacking this and that. And so I'm hoping that that kind of transparency will happen with the current agreement that just been signed today.
Yes, and really quick, Haley, glad to see you back. We're gonna wrap up like in a few, like in the next 5 minutes. But just to address this particular comment, right? Like, one, Friends of the Congo is a nonprofit organization and we are nonpartisan, right? Like, and we have been around since 2004. We work with Republicans, Democrats, as you can imagine, it since 2004. Like, both parties have played that musical chair of being power and not being power. And Friends of the Congo doesn't really care who is in power in terms of doing the work that we do to support the people. organize and provide the support that we need, and also provides some sort of like expertise when it comes to what the U.S. foreign policy should be in Africa, particularly in the Great Lake region. And I guess not speaking on what Mama Emanuela said or for her, she will have the time to express what she meant to say. What I will say is that when we talk about Trump administration, we're not talking about the individual. We're talking about the institution. We're talking about the country. We're talking about the government. And I think it will be disingenuous to say that everything that is being done is bad, because there are certain things that the president said that can be like, oh wow, how can he say that? But it's also a whole structure. There are folks, even if he's a president, there are people working at the immigration. There are judges. There are folks working in embassy that were not necessarily chosen by him, or that even if it doesn't matter who's the president, they're still going to be working for the government. They're still going to be there, right? And when we talk about the administration, when we talk about the Trump government, particularly from a international perspective, we talk about the whole government. We talk about the whole system, and in painting that system and say they're all they're bad. No, there are people within that system. Yes, they're Republicans. Yes, they're conservative. Yes, they work with Trump, but it will also be a mistake for us to say that they're all bad, because then does it mean that we only think that only the Democrats are the good people? That's a food for thought. And I will also saying that because they're bad, we cannot work with them, and we don't operate in that way. We operate in a way that as long as you are a human being, as long as you're in a position of power, you have the possibility, you have the power to make some change in terms of how you view certain issue, change your mind. That's also possible, but also making decisions that will actually improve the the social economic condition of the people, whether it is here in the U.S. or overseas. Because trust me, bro, like when it comes to the U.S. foreign policy, what we see overseas is only a reflection of what is being done here. So if we cannot comprehend, and that's even what Malcolm X said, if we cannot comprehend what's going on in the Congo, how can we expect things to change in Mississippi? How can we expect things to change in Ferguson? How can we expect things to change in LA when the same system in place to exploit, extract, oppress are the same? And the people who dismantle that are not just black, are not just white, are not just brown. It's a collective effort. So we do believe in that. And I do agree with you when you says that the too many immigrants have skewed politics, and that's the first thing that we said at the beginning, talking about organizing, and that's why I brought Haley in. That's why I brought Mama Emanuela to show the perspective. We different perspective, U.S. citizen from different background, but we also seeing the same thing in terms of the pushback that we get when we organize, the pushback that we get when we speak up. And to Emmanuel, you want to maybe respond to this? And I'm going to give the floor.
Sure. Yes. I mean, you said it really well, and it's it's our responsibilities when we speaking in a public platform to provide an educated response or educated sharing of information. So it will not be responsible for me to speak of something that I know there are some policies that could benefit the future of this country, and some that are not so good. And as I mentioned, what I was saying earlier, it's the same for every administration. When it's the Democrats, whether it was President Obama or President Clinton or the Bushes, all of them, we people, academia, people with an opportunity to speak had something to say. It was good. There's something that were not so good. And in this case, we're talking about what's so good, what's not so good, because we're talking about the subject of immigration, which we agree is not so good. And solely because of the reason, the baseline of what was the baseline of the foundation of this country, whatever that's founded this country was founded on diversity, on the spirit of welcoming, and it would just be very hypocritical of us not to talk about the current happenings of the decision that the administration is taking right now if we do not, not point finger, but analyze where
Mhm.
it's flawed, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's not, as I mentioned before, is we I can never carry such opinion on an individual when I know it's a whole establishment. And you made a very good point that there are so many actors playing at it. There's officers at the USCIS, there are judges, there are border patrols, custom agents. It's a lot of people, and some of these decisions are made out of people's feelings and how they feel about like what they're looking at, and but we need to call it the Trump administration because there is someone is at the top, right? He
Mhm.
accepted the solemn honor of running the country and of being the chief commander of all these people holding these key and special positions, and that's why we'll call it that way. But again, it's a collective of everybody putting their stone on the rock to this edifice, to the building, and building it up to the problems or the solution that they are.
Yeah, exactly. And we're gonna wrap up. We're gonna end. I promise. I think I said that 5 times. But one of the last, and I want it to be Haley, your kind of like last word because that's the whole reason why I even brought you in to kind of give you perspective on this immigration issue in terms of if immigrants are still welcome here. And then there's a question from True Sarah. I appreciate y'all. Appreciate for your comments and also going back and forth with other folks in the comment section, kind of entertaining. And he said, are you disappointed at Latino immigrants who are not united, who seek white adjacency at any cost? And then he said, don't put this on Black Americans. Give you the time to conclude, but also to like address this because that's also like the whole reason why we discussing this. And again, I remind people that you half Black and half Hispanic, and that's how you introduce yourself. So go ahead.
Well, I will just maybe like a little bit of a correction that's not quite my heritage. So actually, I'm Panamanian. My family, I'm a first generation Panamanian American, which means that my family is from the Caribbean. They're Black Caribbean, but they also are Spanish speaking, and they came from the mainland of Panama. So we have that dualism in our heritage of being Black and also Spanish speaking, and also identifying with many aspects of Latino culture, but also being at our roots very Caribbean. And also in terms of what's relevant here when it comes to how we're viewed by the system is our Blackness, right? When I made my comment, I was addressing both Black Americans and Black immigrants, both, because I mean, I am, and my family would identify as Americans, but we're also immigrants. You see, so these labels don't really serve a really productive purpose if we cannot understand that one person can exist under many labels at the same time. Because my comment was addressing Latino immigrants as well, particularly Black folk, obviously. But when we talk about immigration, when we talk about Latinos and Latino politics, I feel as though, and as I said earlier, there's a massive disconnect in understanding is that Latinos also face racism in their own home countries for being dark skinned. They face the same kinds of afflictions that Black Americans feel living here in the United States. I think that, and actually, I know that a lot of Latinos, just like a lot of white individuals, have sought protection by buying into the white supremacist idea. And a lot of Latinos, even back in their home countries, they're white, they're light skinned, their family comes from old European money, Perhaps their family immigrated to Argentina from Italy. Perhaps their family came to Cuba from Italy, or from Germany,
Holland.
from Germany, from all different European countries. So they still, just like here in the United States, they still have that white supremacist, that European idealism that oppresses the rest of society. And so here in the United States, it is unsurprising that, places like South Florida, which you would think would be Democratic leaning, is actually very Republican, because those are the predominantly white, more affluent, say like Cubans, for example, that came over during Fidel Castro's bout in Cuba, and they got preferential treatment here in the United States. White Latinos historically have gotten preferential treatment by the United States because of their European ancestry. But for the rest of Latin Americans, that is not the case. They're indigenous, they're Black, they're mixed, they are descendants of slaves, they're descendants of a lot of mixture of indigenous cultures, and there's a lot of the same racial conflict in Latin America that there is here in the United States. So I am, just to answer the question more specifically, I am always disappointed and very disheartened to see fellow immigrants who buy into the white ideal and seek to oppress other immigrants. It's the same thing with people who, whose families came here the right way. That is irrelevant, in my opinion. And when it comes to human rights, that's irrelevant. There's no amount of, well, my family did it this way, so your family should have done it. No two families are really going through the same thing. If one country is coming from Mexico and the other country, the other family is coming from Guatemala, the other family is coming from Haiti, they all have different stories. They all have different contexts. There is no one person that can say that, the way that I did it should be the way that you were able to do it, because 9 times out of 10, the capability is not there. I mean, think about for example, the conflict going on in Congo. It's been several decades. That's how long it takes for some people to get their green card. That is how long this quote unquote due process takes. And your whole family could be dead by then. You could be dead by then. Your children could have starved to death by then. Nobody in need should ever have to wait even 2 seconds to seek freedom. And that's not a human right that a country can give us. That's not a human right that a constitution can give us. That's a human right that we all simply have. The right to live, the right to move, the right to seek freedom from our oppressors. No part of my comment or my argument has ever shifted blame onto Black Americans for what is going on right now. I don't really know how else I can say that, because I've gotten that comment so many times.
Yeah.
It's not even a blame game. It's a call for solidarity. It's a call to recognize the sameness of our problems. It's a call to connect, really. Just like Emanuela was saying about allies. Allies are so important. I didn't see one Black American complaining about the Black Cuban solidarity, the Black Puerto Rican solidarity, the Black Colombian solidarity, the Black Brazilian solidarity during Black Lives Matter. I saw that. I saw so much inclusion during those protests, during that period of really scary conflict, and I'm seeing it again. There are police out here in the streets beating protesters, imprisoning protesters. People are dying in custody. A woman just had to miscarry her child on the floor of a jail cell with no help after crying out for days. These afflictions are not exclusive to one demographic. Because again, weapons used against your neighbor will be used against you, and we are seeing that. And that you should not wait until it's used against you to say something about it. That is my philosophy. It doesn't have to be my child, it doesn't have to be my mom, it doesn't have to be my grandma. It just has to be someone. And that's enough for me to care.
Yeah, it just has to be someone. Thank you so much, Haley. Mama
Thank
Emanuela, I
you.
think you're gonna have the opportunity to like close us out. Uh, we've talked about immigration. We've talked about the way we have seen immigration policy being um, implemented. Um, you're serving refugees, you're serving students, you're serving immigrants. How do we move from there? Like, what's next? Like, how do we move forward? I would just leave it there. How do we move forward as people, as a community?
Um, yeah, it's a very good question. I think that the answer is within us as the human race, really. It just mind you, I use the word human race purposely to call for unity, because we are one, really, at the end of the day. Because nobody's blood is blue under those veins. When they open us up, it's the same, and we all end up dead at some point. It's whether you like it or not, regardless of your provenance, your origins, or the history of your ancestry, or how you ended up in a given country that you can freely call yours. I'd like to leave us with the thought that we are fighting for a change of narrative, but change can only happen when we recognize that there's a problem. And we need to recognize it's a problem. It's definitely a problem. We are not looking for handouts. We're not looking to be here complaining day and night. We want to establish the problem, the systemic issue that groups are being singled out in almost uh, it's like a chase, a human chase. We want the people, the global population, the American people, to recognize that it's a direct attack to a specific group of people, which translates to the word of discrimination. We do not want this great country to be known for that. We want to be a participating group of people that want to inform, collaborate, fund ally, and bring them to knowledge for those who are ignorant, giving them the opportunity to recognize the problem with the role, the only goal to resolve it. We don't want to be whining all the time. We have established a problem. We want to be heard without a name calling. We want to be able to move forward from it with inclusivity, identifying ways to live together, identifying ways to also see beyond the veil of titles or names, immigrant, foreign or alien, legal alien or whatnot. Just see the human that's in front of you, the human that's coming here to save their life, their 2 year old daughter, their 7 year old boy, a human who wants to save the life of their pregnant wife or their dying father or mother or their grandfather, someone who just is coming here seeking that, a human first. Once the problem has been established and we are in agreement there, we will easily see that we can come up with solution. That's what human beings do. We are engineers by birth. We see a problem, we agree about the existence of the problem, then we attack it and come up with a solution. That's really the message that the Congolese Integration Network wants to send out there, and in our fight to support and represent immigrants and refugees, we want our neighbors, our peers, the American people, and the global citizens to understand that there is a problem, but we want to solve it. We don't want to dwell in the problem. We have some ways, some proposals how to address the problem together. We need allies. We want to work with people who want to join, understand what's going on. We also want to get to the point where people understand that we have a lot to give. It's not about just receiving. We have a lot to give. We have a lot to bring on the table. Something that y'all will like, will really appreciate, and if you just give the time to become allies, understand that we have a problem to solve together. So join the cause, the fight, and support refugees and immigrants who are just here to find peace and a future for their families that they will eventually give back, just like the Elon Musk of today.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Haley. Thank you, Manuela. And it's
Thank you
what
so
both of
much.
you shared. What both of you shared today was very empowering, very informative, very educational. And thank you for the resistance. Thank you for the education. Thank you for the passion. I think that's also what we need. And someone had asked me in inbox, as send me a text and say, "Well, it's Congo Unfiltered. It's Friends of the Congo. Why are you talking about immigrants or immigrations in the U.S.?" And I was just thinking, I'm like, how can I organize for Congolese people? How can I convince? Because again, what's going on in the Congo is the results or the consequence of the U.S. foreign policy. The same way I could say about European foreign policy. But how can I convince? How can I convince Americans to reshape, restructure the U.S. their foreign policy in the Congo, in Africa, for Black people overseas when they are unable to organize and convince their leaders to also help out their own people here in the US? Like, I cannot ask you to support the Congo when you cannot support your neighbor. I cannot ask you to support an unknown person who's fleeing a war in Goma when you're unable to, and then you share personal stories of someone who lost the baby while in custody, and why you're not able in the US to stand up for those who are being incarcerated here in the US, right? So to me, it's very important to draw that connection, to bridge that connection between what's going on overseas in terms of the systems that are being used, in terms of the oppression the people are going through overseas versus the oppression here. It's also very important to show and highlight the connection between the solidarity with people overseas and the solidarity with people here. People who are who show so much solidarity here in the U.S. will most likely also embrace solidarity with other nations overseas. So that was essentially what I was trying to accomplish, and I think I was successful into that. So again, thank you, Haley, for being outspoken, for being passionate, and for being true to the issue. Mama Emanuela, thank you for your commitment, the work that you're doing at Congolese Integration Network. Because yes, folks come here not by choice; they're forced. They have to, and they're here because they want to live, they want to
Mhm.
survive, and an organization like yours are ways for them to do that. So I do appreciate your hard work. Yeah, thank you so much to both of
Thank
you.
you for hosting
Thank
Thank
us.
you
Great
guys for
yes,
being
fun.
amazing and for using your
thank you.
platform.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for all of you guys watching us, tuning
Yes.
in. I think we have been on since 1 p.m. Eastern Time, from the peace deal signing to the White House events that we saw, and to this conversation. You guys were there watching, commenting, and giving a perspective. So thank you so much. So I'll say see you all next time. Ciao.
Yay. Take care.
Bye.